Hey, it's Scott for FamilyWheels.ca with another car review for your growing family, and this week we're checking out the brand new Infiniti QX50. Now, the folks at Infiniti here have really outdone themselves by pouring just heaps of technology into this new model, and I think that they've done a really great job here. But what makes it actually so special is that not only does it look great and is it technologically really advanced, but it actually is a really great and competent family hauler as well. Here, let me show you. So the first thing we need to talk about here is the engine. It's an inline 4-cylinder, it's turbo, makes 268 horsepower, fairly standard for a model like this. But what's so cool about it is that Infiniti have actually invented a motor that changes itself as you drive to improve the way the car drives and performs. I know there are other manufacturers who've attempted things like this before. Now, I won't name names, but you likely know what I mean. Engines that jump around between 4 and 8 cylinders at a time to better mileage and performance. But this is something different. Infiniti call it Vici Turbo, and essentially the engine can alter its compression in the cylinders and its turbo boost at a given time in order to affect how the car drives. When you think about it, it's really quite genius, and I won't bore you with all the details of how it actually operates, but the people who came up with this idea and actually made it work seriously had their work cut out for themselves, but they did it. And not only does it work, but it works well, and it adds to the distinction of the QX50. And I really do feel like the QX50 is a special car. You get that feeling as soon as you get a good look at it. The mid-sized SUV segment is extremely crowded and hard to stand out in, but the QX50 makes it look easy. I love its stance. It's the perfect balance between luxurious and aggressive, and the dark tinted 20-inch alloys that our test model came equipped with really set it off. There are 5 different trim options available. They all get that special turbo 4-cylinder I was mentioning, along with a CVT transmission, and all-wheel drive comes standard. Other standard fare includes a power tailgate, LED headlights, remote start, blind spot monitoring, and an awesome panoramic moonroof. As you step up from here, there are options galore like power tilt and telescoping steering wheel, parking sensors, heads-up display, a Bose premium sound system, those aforementioned 20-inch wheels, and Infiniti's Pro Pilot Assist system, which is not automated driving, but it's kind of a step in that direction. Things like blind spot monitoring and assistive braking and stuff. Essentially, they say it's things that the driver doesn't necessarily want to have to deal with when having the experience of driving, and the whole idea here is just to assist in that process and let the car do the things that aren't necessarily that enjoyable so that you can focus on the things that are. It's pretty cool and it works well. The base model starts at 44,490 Canadian, and from there you can climb all the way up to 57,990 for the top model. That's the Autograph, and this guy here that we're in is the Sensory, and it comes in at 56,490 Canadian, which I honestly feel is a pretty great price for what you get. And it's right on par with what I would probably call its main competitor, the Acura RDX. Now that model comes in base level at about $2,000 more. It's 46,190, but the top model RDX is actually about $900 cheaper than the top model of the QX50. Now, I know when you're spending 60-ish grand Canadian on a car, 900 bucks doesn't seem like that much, but still, it's something. Moving on to the interior here, the fit and finish are basically as you would expect from a premium offering like this. They're excellent. The leather is nice and firm, but not crazy stiff like you'd find in a Jaguar, and the layout of the dash and console works perfectly. Some of the interior accents in here are finished in this micro suede, which seems to be getting more and more popular, though honestly, I don't really love it, especially in a family car. It just seems less likely to stand up to the abuses of kids and pets and everything else that might come in contact with it, more so than the traditional leather or some sort of paneled finish. The cockpit and the seats are really comfortable, and I found everything that I needed or wanted while driving to just be right there, like easily accessible from this position. The power adjustable wheel made it really easy to find a driving position that I liked, and all of the controls were easy to figure out and get sorted into a manner that worked for me. I've been in other cars where I couldn't, for the life of me, find a feature when I needed it or wanted it, but here in the QX50, everything is just straightforward. The car feels roomy throughout as well. A cool feature of the rear seats is they actually slide to give you more cargo room if you need it, or to accommodate taller passengers. This model also came with the rear sunshades that we parents love, and tri-zone climate control so the kids back here can get comfy without bothering mom and dad up front. Rear-facing car seat here was fine, not crazy huge. This is a mid-size SUV, but no problem. We measured 28.5 inches from the back of the passenger seat to the glove box, though a friend of mine who's over 6 feet sat in the passenger seat here with the child seat installed behind him and no problems at all. And in our standardized trunk test, the Infiniti passed with flying colors, tons of space back there as well, 889 liters, which tops the Acura RDX, Beamer X3, and the Audi Q5. It actually feels surprisingly more spacious than a mid-size SUV should to me, and apparently to all the people who rode with me as well. So for whatever reason, this week I just happened to have a lot of passengers in here, and every one of them commented on how spacious the cabin felt. Now let's talk infotainment system, and again, as you'd expect, it's all very premium and high-tech feeling, but I have to point out how well I think Infiniti did here with their layout of everything. This is something to me that can really make or break the driving experience, and in Infiniti's case, they hit a bit of a home run. I like the two dedicated screens, and I really appreciate that they're presented at roughly the same angle and size. It makes it feel like it's one whole system with its features all working together, as opposed to other units I've tested where the separated screens feel like separate tools for separate jobs. Just creates a busyness that I don't really like. In here, things feel purposeful and clean, like not cluttered, despite the amount of buttons and controls you use to operate everything. And you know how much of a fan I am of actual tactile hard buttons as opposed to everything just being controlled by touchscreen, and Infiniti were nice enough to accommodate that. Both screens are touch, but you get buttons to help with climate control and selecting your way through menus and displays. There's no wasted space on the screens either. Everything that you want is there, and everything that you don't want isn't. However, we do need to point out something here that I consider to be kind of a big deal, at least to me anyway. The QX50 lacks both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, no support for either. I consider that to be a fairly serious oversight on Infiniti's part. We do have one of these wheels for the operating system, and it too works well. I like that it's actually set off to the side here as opposed to being a big bulky thing in the middle of the console. If you're not using it, you actually almost forget that it's there. There's also a camera button here with selectable view that I found a nice feature to help with parking in the city. And as you'd expect, everything you want to know from your system is also available in the dash and selectable via steering wheel controls. And yes, here too, I found things to be nice and clean and really well laid out. And I loved watching the stats on how that aforementioned power plant is working. It kind of reminds you of a hybrid that shifts between gas and battery, as it shows you in real time how the compression and turbo boost are changing as you drive. It's really cool. On that note, economy-wise, the QX50 did pretty great. It's got that fancy new 4-cylinder that's designed to save you some money. We averaged about 9 liters for 100 kilometers through a week of combined driving, which works out to about 26 US miles per gallon. The interior is quiet too. We got 62 decibels in our decibel test. That's at 100 kilometers an hour. We tested it on a dry road, but it is worth mentioning that this model that we tested in does have winter tires on it. That said, you wouldn't want that 268 horsepower turbocharged engine to go to waste, and if you feel so inclined, you get a nice exhaust note when you put the car in sport mode and give it a little kick. Drive-wise, it felt awesome. I mean, it's not specifically designed to be a sports model, but it's definitely no slouch. There was a bit of body roll in the corners, but what do you expect from an SUV? And of course, the trade-off there is that it's extremely comfortable for both driver and passenger. It all just feels really great, like you're in command of a high-end, purpose-built machine that prides itself on giving its passengers an A+ experience. ultimately, I think it's safe to say that I really like this car. I mean, the interior is bright and clean. It almost has this calming effect when you get into it. It has all the bells and whistles, and they all work really great. Very useful for a family, I think. And it's also right in the wheelhouse of what you would expect to spend on a car like this. And to me, a vehicle that I own, it's essential that it has that X factor. And what I mean by that is, when you park it and walk away from it, do you find yourself stealing a glance back at it? And in this car, more often than not, I did. So that's a check as well. The only problem that I could see with owning it for my family is I think it'd be my wife who wants to drive it more often than not. For FamilyWheels.ca, I'm Scott.